Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first CCSN podcast. I am Chris Casella here today with my friend and business partner, Chase Carlos. Before we start episode one today, we're going to give you guys a little background about who we are and how we're not only going to broaden your sports knowledge, but change your overall way of thinking of the games we have come to know and love.
We founded CC Sports Network on the idea of producing high-quality sports content while challenging the current format used in sports writing, journalism, and broadcasting today. Sports media really focuses on the size of their audience and the amount of clicks and shares that their articles and stories can generate. Major outlets tend to care more about the personalities of the broadcasters rather than the topics being discussed. At CC Sports, our goal is to provide our followers with thought-out and evidence-based NBA, MLB, and NFL content daily.
We're here to become your number one resource for all your daily sports needs, news, and entertainment. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CC Sports to interact with us and receive updates and notifications for new uploads and content. Again, my name is Chris Casella.
And I'm Chase Carlos. We're glad to have you along for the ride.
All right, Chase, how you doing today?
Doing great. How about you, Chris?
I am doing great. We got a lot to discuss. We're 2 days away from the biggest day in MLB, the trade deadline. We already got some moves going down. Been attending New York. What do you think is going to happen? What are your predictions?
I think one of the major names is gone. Ohtani, Soto, I think you could throw Luis Castillo in there, but I think he's almost a guarantee to be gone. But between Ohtani and Soto, I think one of them has to go. You don't see names like this being brought up around the trade deadline this often. And I think there's going to be a GM who's kind of wary about his job and his job security, looking to make this big type of move, get the superstar, get it. Ohtani and Soto are guys that you can just plug and play right away and be the best player on your team. And there aren't many guys like that in any sport. Those kind of guys, when they become available and you have the trade packages to go get them, you do it. So I think that there will be a team that makes that move, and it won't wait till the offseason.
I agree with you. I think they both should be moved, but I think they're both actually going to be moved in the off season. I don't, especially Ohtani. I could definitely see Soto being moved more than I could see Ohtani being moved more because it's been talked about even before the season started. The one thing is though is what they're gonna have to give up, especially for a guy like Ohtani. I don't even think a package could even match his value because he gives it to you on both sides, offense and pitching, obviously. So I think that's one trade that's gonna have to wait till the offseason. Again, I really like the Texas Rangers for a destination for him. I think that gives them their ace. I think that gives them another big bat in that lineup, which they desperately need if they really want to be at the top of the food chain. And I mean, Soto's going to be in California. That's my prediction. I think it's going to either end up with the Dodgers or in San Diego eventually. I think San Diego does have the best package, but I just really can't realistically see them giving up everything that they're asking for. I mean, you're giving up your future starting shortstop, your future ace to be, hopefully. So it's a lot to give up, but again, as you said, Soto's a generational talent. He's a plug-and-play player, especially putting him in a lineup with Machado, who's, top 3 in MVP right now, and Fernando Tatis when he's healthy. We all know how good he is and not riding motorcycles. So, I mean, it could be big for that lineup. So that's definitely something a Padres GM has to consider, especially after a couple mistakes he's made. I mean, trading for Blake Snell has obviously been terrible trade. He hasn't been anything like he was in that World Series or his Cy Young year. So, I mean, a big splash would definitely do good for him. So I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about job security. That's the one guy who instantly comes to mind with job security. He's got the best team really on paper, one of the best teams on paper in the sport. And they've been pretty disappointing outside of they choked in the playoffs. They had that run in the regular season. They fell off towards the end of the last season. You're really starting to look at this guy like, hey, what are you doing now? Let's start. We've got talent. Let's start getting it working. I understand that Tatis was hurt. He took his BP the other day, but even outside of Tatis, that's a very, very talented roster, and they're also a team with the assets to go make a move like that. So I think it's really a perfect storm here. I do think that he's almost guaranteed to be a Padre at this point. The only other team that I could see sweeping in there would be the Cardinals, because if you think about it, the Dodgers, who are in this conversation, they're going to have to wait, or they're going to want to wait, because they wouldn't have to give up all that for him. He obviously wants to be in LA. We saw that over the All-Star break, and then in the series immediately after, he loves it there. I think that they're going to be willing to give him a huge offer in free agency, which they have the means to do. They're in LA. They're one of those teams that can spend that money. I think they're willing to wait. They have a team that's a contender right now. They don't need him. So that kind of crosses off one of the teams. The Yankees are another one. They just made a move for an outfielder. They don't look like they want to give up their top prospect, so I don't think they're going to make that move right now. So it kind of comes down to the Cards and the Padres for me right now. And I think one of them's gonna make this move, because both of those teams are looking to contend right now. Paul Goldschmidt's 35, 34, and he's raking right now. He's absolutely killing it. He's an MVP player right now. How long are you going to get that? He's an old guy hitting for his best season in a long time, and you don't know how much longer you're going to have with him. He's a franchise guy. You want to win with him. I understand they have some issues with pitching, but you go all in. You make those moves right now. You have the farm to give up. You have Gorman, Wynn, Liberatore. They have Walkers. They've got plenty of people to give up. I think that either the Cardinals or the Padres are definitely the front runners for him at this point.
If I was the Cardinals, I would obviously definitely consider Juan Soto. I mean, obviously, if you're any MLB GM, you consider Juan Soto. But the number one thing I would do if I were them is I'd go out and get a starting pitcher. That's something they desperately need. And if I was going to put all the chips on the table, if I was the Cardinals, I would go out for a guy like Luis Castillo. And even if you want to bolster that a little more and bring in two guys, go get a guy like Chad Kuhl, can be the bottom rotation guy. The Cardinals are lacking at their starting rotation. They really could definitely use some help there. But as you said, I mean, I feel like Juan Soto could be like their next cornerstone Cardinal. I mean, they had their Yachty, they had their Albert Pujols. Let's bring in Soto. Arenado's on the wrong side of 30 now. Paul Goldschmidt's obviously on the wrong side of 30, but he's raking still.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you definitely need that new guy. I don't think Tommy Edman could really be your star on offense. He's a great player, but he's not going to be your star on offense, and that's fine. That's not what we're asking for. Not everybody is Juan Soto or Mike Trout, but if you can pull the strings and you can get this guy, do it. But if you're being realistic and you want to make the postseason this year and make a little deeper run than you did last year with getting out in the first game of the wild card, which we shouldn't have even been in the playoffs last year. They had that fantastic run at the end of the year. But if I'm the Cardinals, I'm definitely steering more towards starting pitching than I am Juan Soto. So I think realistically, the only team really looking at Soto right now is the Padres. So I definitely think that's where he's going to end up, but I think it's going to be in the offseason more likely than the trade deadline, because I think the asking price is just ridiculous right now. I mean, again, giving up your future ace and a future star shortstop for Soto, it's going to be a lot. I mean, they're both young, so it's a business decision, but we'll see what happens. But going on to another big guy at the deadline, how about Wilson Contreras? Where do you think he's going to end up?
See, I was in the board of like the Mets. The Mets it makes so much sense, but I don't think so anymore. They've made their moves. I think they're kind of sitting on the roster as is at the moment. I don't think they're going to be willing to give up their top prospects for a rental catcher. Where yes, you can re-sign him obviously, but he's not going to come in and catch right away for whatever team he goes to. He's got to develop that chemistry with the pitching. So right now you're trading for a bat on an expiring deal. And the Cubs are asking for a lot. So his trade market is very confusing to me. I don't think it's going to be the Mets anymore. I think Houston makes a lot of sense. I know we were talking about that before. They don't have a backstop to trust. So who better than Wilson Contreras? They've got the means to extend him after this. They've been looking for one for a while. It's an automatic out when their guys come up to the plate. So I think that Houston makes a lot of sense for Contreras, and I think that maybe Contreras and relief pitching trade for a couple of their prospects might be a pretty good move for them. I think that would really put them over the edge and make them the favorites in that division, because right now it's kind of going back and forth between them and the Yankees. Both of them are very great teams. I understand the Astros have kind of their number this year, but you can't count out the Yankees. You really can't. So that's kind of where I'm thinking.
I think there's been rumored three teams that have been calling about Contreras, which have been the Mets, the Rays, and the Guardians. And honestly, I think that Contreras, the best fit would be the Astros, but they're not calling apparently. But you never know with that. But I definitely could see the Mets because I don't think the asking price they're gonna get as much as people are thinking of. I mean, especially when it comes to 1 year rentals, people overvalue that. And especially for a guy like Wilson Contreras, who would probably end up leaving the Cubs as much as he loves the franchise, but he's at a part of his career where I think he's in win now mode. But with the Mets, I think it's one that really makes sense. It's either the Mets or Astros. The Mets really do need a catcher, especially they're trying to be the top team in the NL, and Contreras could put them over the top. You give him a month. I mean, McCann's not your guy. He's just not at all. I mean, that's okay. And this would obviously be a 1 year rental for the Mets. You have Alvarez coming up next year. But another name circulating has been Sean Murphy of the Athletics. He's been hitting really good. And that's a guy who I think makes a lot of sense for the lower level teams like the Cleveland Guardians and the Rays, because he has 3 years left of team control and he's 27 years old. So especially when he hits free agency, he's not going to be asking for that much, a 30-year-old catcher. So that's another name circulating around who I think could be a really good contributor at the deadline. I mean, he's great defensively. He's pretty good offensively, especially for a catcher. I think he has 12 home runs this year. I mean, so he has the power to be that guy, hit fifth or sixth in your lineup. But when it comes to Contreras, my prediction is going to be the Mets. But I don't know. I feel like they got a lot of prospects, and I feel like Steve Cohen's one of those guys who wants to go out there and he wants to win now. So that's my prediction with that.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with the Mets, but it's just the coming up of Alvarez potentially this year, because from what Mets fans, they want him up right now, pretty much. And I understand all fans want their top prospects up now, but he's ready. He's in AAA. He's not batting too well down there, but he's pretty much ready to come up by the end of the season. If you're asking me, September-ish. Wilson Contreras, I do think that maybe the market's not going to be as big as people are expecting, but I think he's going to get traded for some pretty good prospects. This is what it reminds me of, is kind of the JT Realmuto trade a few years ago. I understand he had another year of team control, but one of the top catchers coming available, and he got traded in the offseason, correct? So even then, a top catcher becoming available that's hitting well in his prime, it's a lot of prospects. I mean, the Phillies gave up pretty much their top farm for that. So I do think that you're going to have to give up some valuable prospects in your top 10 for Wilson Contreras. I don't know that the Mets are going to be willing to do that, especially if it's just a 1 year rental, which leads me to think that either the Astros are going to make that trade, or just somebody's going to swoop in and say, hey, we want to compete right now, and Contreras is valuable enough as he is as a bat. Because, as I said, a catcher, he's not going to be catching for you right away. It just takes too long to develop that chemistry. Maybe by the playoffs, but still, I think that there might be a team that just comes out of nowhere and picks him up. And that's why it's very hard for me to predict Contreras' trade market right now.
Coming back with that for the Alvarez for the Mets, I can't see a team like the Mets, especially a team, as I said, who's trying to be a top dog. I can't see them relying on a rookie catcher to be their guy in the playoffs, catching all these games. I mean, I think it'd be good for the Mets and good for his development to give him the rest of this year in AAA, let him hit the ball, let him find his groove. That's where I think Contreras falls in. I mean, the Mets want to win, and they made that very clear. Steve Cohen has made that very clear. And I just think you give this guy 2 months, I think he could definitely build a connection with guys like Max Scherzer, DeGrom, and Chris Bassett. I mean, you got a lot of veterans over there who want to win. They know how to win. They know how to make connections, especially guys like Scherzer and DeGrom. I mean, they're animals. They know what they're doing. And I feel like they'd be able to work that out. I just can't see the Mets putting all of that faith into Alvarez, because baseball runs through your catcher. He calls the game. He knows what's going on. You have the best catcher in baseball. you're going to win games. I mean, look at Yadier Molina. He hasn't been great with his bat for probably 6 or 7 years now, and he's still regarded as one of the top catchers in the game just because he's so smart. And Contreras is obviously not as good of a catcher as Yadi, but he's close to him when it comes defensively. So I feel like that's just not defensively when it comes to calling a game. So I feel like that's another thing that the Mets are looking at. I mean, if you have a guy like Scherzer, DeGrom on the mound going to Contreras, that's a lot of smart baseball knowledge back and forth, especially when you're in the ALDS or the ALDS, the NLDS or the NLCS. So that's just why I have a really strong feeling he's going to end up on a team like the Mets.
Yeah, I get that. I just feel like their catchers at the moment, as far as calling a game, they've been pretty solid. I mean, the guys that they've got, you really are. It comes down to the asking price at the end of the day, because I don't think that you're gaining too much as far as calling a game. It's just a bat at the end of the day that you're getting from Wilson Contreras. The increase in catching production isn't going to be that much, but the bat, he's got like a 900 OPS, so I do think that there's a lot of value for him. And like you said, a 1-year rental. The Mets are a team that doesn't have like too many prospects that they can give up. They've got a good top 3, but after that, it's kind of a weaker farm. So that is something that makes me a little bit worried that they won't make that move. I think they're going to kind of stay a little bit content, especially after the 2 trades that they've already made. I think they made their moves, and they're content to wait until the offseason to unload some of their prospects, especially with a name like Ohtani being available, because I think the Mets are going to be front runners for Ohtani, and they're going to have all their prospects to give up for him. Cohen already called and asked for the Angels' asking price on Ohtani, and I think if it were possible, he'd make that move this week. But I don't think Ohtani gets traded this week. So I think Soto does, not Ohtani.
I think if the Mets were to trade for Ohtani this week, you would go on their farm system website and there would just be nothing there. So
I would be their top prospect. That's pretty much how it is. But it would probably be worth it. And I think that the Angels lose that trade. At the end
yeah, really. Ohtani's level of what he gives to your roster is just, you can't compare it to anybody else. I mean, he does it on both sides. So it's crazy what that guy can do and what he's going to do for years to come, but it's not going to happen on the Angels after this offseason. So I'm excited to see where he ends up. But heading to the other side of New York, the New York Yankees, I think that Benintendi deal was fantastic. They gave up a guy who looks like a mid-level starter. That's the top guy they gave up. And to get a guy who can get on base like Benintendi, get a guy who's probably going to get the vaccination now. That was his big thing going into this. That was an A+ trade for the Yankees. I mean, now they just got to shed that Gallo. They just got to shed Gallo, get him out of here. I mean, Aaron Judge has more home runs than Gallo has hits this year.
Yeah.
So you see that. That's horrible. So Benny gives you that guy who can bat leadoff. He could bat third. He gets on base, plays great defense. But I don't think the Yankees are done yet. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries to their bullpen recently, so I could definitely see them getting guys like Michael Givens, someone like that. But I really think they're put all the chips on the table, and I think they're gonna go get Luis from the Reds. I mean, a couple weeks ago when he came into New York and destroyed them right from his home crowd, I didn't think he was leaving that night, and he did. But he's still been dominating. He's still been great. He's been one of the best pitchers in the league. And no o's watched him because no one watched the Cincinnati Reds games. I mean, would you watch a Cincinnati Reds game? Their best player is Joey Votto right now, other than Luis Castillo. So
he's
been the best player for 12 years. Exactly.
But not unless Castillo's pitching. If he's pitching, I'm putting it on. So
if Castillo is pitching for the Yankees, though, he's gonna gain 100,000 more Instagram followers in 2 days. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, that's might be putting it light. I think he might hit a milli instantly second he joins the Yankees. But I mean, he is really a top level pitcher that doesn't get talked about that much because he's on the Reds. I really think that if and when he gets traded, it's going to be a lot bigger of a deal than people talk about. This is an ace level guy getting added to a team who's going to be contending. And I think that only contending teams are in on him at the moment. And I think the Yankees are the biggest team in on him. I think they end up with him. And that's huge because they have a bit of an iffy bottom of the rotation. You start shoring that up a little bit. they have if there's a streaky team in general, but if they can get great pitching as well as Judge and some production from all the rest of their guys, Benintendi, if Gallo can figure anything out at all, Rizzo, Stanton, all these guys can start hitting at all. You're really dangerous. Like this Yankees team, I understand that every year they think they're winning the World Series, but this year they've got the means to do it, especially if they had a guy like Castillo.
I think you just can't trust guys like Jordan Montgomery in the playoffs to give you 6 or 7 shutout innings, 7 great innings, and you could trust Luis with that. I mean, he's if you ever watch him, he looks unhittable. His pitches move like all over the plate. He's crazy, and adding that to the New York Yankees, hearing that roll call for the first time, I mean, it would be great. It would be cool to see that, but. Another name that's been interesting at the deadline, I don't really think it's going to happen. I think it's more fun to think about than actually going to happen is Shane Bieber. But I think it'd be smart for the Guardians to move a guy like him, especially with his velocity coming down over the past couple of years. And he won his Cy Young Award during the Mickey Mouse season. So that's another thing that people have to keep an eye on. I mean, he was great that season, but he went 8-1. I think he had 12 starts. So that's not. I mean, it was great sample size, but nothing really much. But a team should be looking for him. I mean, I'd be calling if I were the Guardian. I'd be calling if the Guardians had him on the market. He's 3.55 ERA. I mean, he's not your number one anymore. But again, if I'm the Yankees and Luis Castillo, you're asking for Anthony Volpe, and then I can go to the Guardians and I can get Shane Bieber for a little bit less. I would definitely consider. I think he has a year left of control. So, I mean, again, and the Yankees are one of those teams where if they want him, they'll pay you. So they don't really have to worry about that. So I think one of those guys will end up on the Yankees. I mean, the Guardians are, again, one of those teams who, when their contract's expiring, they're not looking to extend you. They're looking to trade you. So
yeah, I think Shane Bieber is going to get a lot. Shane Bieber is going to get paid a lot when his free agency time comes up. And I think that, as you said, his trajectory is starting to go downwards. So right now is where you're looking to get the end of Shane Bieber's prime. So this is when you want to make that trade. As an organization, the Guardians, you should be looking to sell him right now because you're not contending. You want the most assets you can get for a guy, especially if you're not willing to pay him. So this is right now is the best time to get rid of him. And I don't understand why his name's not on the market at all. I don't see any talks about it. I think you're right. I think that he really should be moved. I think a team like the Yankees, I know we've been talking about them a lot, but they have the assets to go get him, and he would be perfect. They could pay him too. They could overpay him and be fine with it because the Yankees have the highest payroll ever. So, I think you're correct on the fact that he should be being talked about more as a name that's on the trade block, but he's not. So I don't think that we see a move with him, but it would be smart for a team to come in and get him for maybe less than Castillo's going for.
And then another name that, again, should be tossed around, but is definitely not going to be traded is not going to be traded at the deadline is Carlos Radon. I think his contract makes it really easy to trade him as the Giants general manager. I mean, he's signed a 2-year player option after 1 year. So, I mean, if I were Rondon, he's having a great year right now. I feel like he's going to opt out after this year. He's going to go to another team. He seems like he's not really enjoying his time in San Francisco. So I'm the Giants general manager right now. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at all our record. I'm looking at that we just lost 7 games in a row. They won last night, but they just lost 7 games in a row. So I'm looking at all of this. I'm looking at where we're sitting in the wild card, and I'm looking at reality. And I'm saying, let's break it down. Let's trade it all. So you could get a hell of a lot for Carlos Rendon right now. I think if you put him available on the market, your line would be blowing up. I could see multiple contenders calling about him. I could see the Rays calling about him. I could see the Yankees calling about him. I could even see the Dodgers calling about him, but the Giants would hang up the phone right away. They would never give him to the Giants. So I mean, that's just another name I could definitely see on the move. I mean, you got a ton of names, but not as high. You got Frankie Montas. He's been great this year. You have Martin Perez, Tyler Mayhew, Madison Bumgarner, Jose Quintada, and Chad Kuhl. So, I mean, there's a lot of people on the market this year. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. And what's your big, bold prediction? Let's end it on that for the deadline.
Oh, I think I already gave it that Soto is either a Padre or a Cardinal. I think that he's gone, and I think that a lot of people are starting to say, well, he's gone at off season. No, I don't think so. I think it's now. I think it makes so much sense. You get an extra half a year. You get him on your team in the playoffs. I think you do it now. So as far as big prediction, that's it. Or a random team snatching Contreras because I don't think that he goes to those teams that are rumored in the talk since the offseason, really.
I think Soto stays and he's going to be traded in the offseason. And I really do think that knowing how smart the Giants are in the organization, I think they're going to realize, hey, this isn't working. And I think they are going to tear it down at the deadline. That is my big MLB trade prediction. I'm sorry, Giants fans, but that's the truth right now. You guys had your one miracle run, but Buster Posey isn't there anymore. So he's not here to save the day.
Now Joey
But
Bart is.
yeah, Joey Bart and Brandon, 34-year-old Brandon Crawford on that 2-year extension. Go Giants. But now let's move into the NBA. So what are your thoughts on the whole KD and Kyrie Irving situation?
Every day that goes by, I change my mind on this situation because Kevin Durant, it makes no sense for him to be playing in Brooklyn next year. None at all. Because it benefits nobody for him to have gone out and said, I don't like it here. I don't like what they're doing. I'm not a fan of what's going on. And then coming back and playing. But I also don't think that there's any. It's hard to trade for Kevin Durant right now because what's his value? Because he could just ask out again wherever he goes if he doesn't like it, because that's what he just did. And that's what he did pretty much. I know it's not exactly what he did in OKC, but he wasn't exactly loving how things went in OKC. So he just joined their rival. So I don't know how to feel about trading for Kevin Durant as a team and giving up all those assets for a guy who, yeah, he's on this 4-year deal, but he's kind of a rental at the end of the day because you don't know what you're getting from him. When he's playing, he's the best player in the NBA, one of the best players. I'm a LeBron guy. Let's get that clear. But on top of that, he's got his injury history too. Like he's got the torn Achilles that he's coming off of. He's got some knee problems. Kevin Durant's trade market, I don't think it's what the Brooklyn Nets are asking for. They were asking for a historic trade package. They wanted the biggest trade in NBA history. I don't think that's going to happen. So it kind of feels like it's going to end up in a stalemate here. And that could, I don't know how to predict Kevin Durant because everything he's done to me has been very confusing. The Golden State move made no sense to me. The Brooklyn move didn't really make sense to me either. So, and asking out after he was making all the decisions. He wanted DeAndre Jordan. He wanted Kyrie Irving. He wanted James Harden. He wanted Kenny Atkinson fired. He wanted to bring in Steve Nash. They did all these things, and now he's saying that he's upset with the team. I don't understand why an organization would want to bring on that drama. And which brings me to the Boston Celtics. That's a tough package to make. You just made the finals, and now you're kind of giving that all up to hope that Kevin Durant brings you over the edge. But Kevin Durant, what does he really add to that team?
I don't think Kevin Durant brings the Celtics over the edge.
I don't either.
I think if anything, it slows them down. It destroys your team chemistry. I don't think it works. I don't think Kevin Durant, people need to realize Kevin Durant does not give a fuck what the NBA fans think. If he wants to go play somewhere else, he'll go play somewhere else. He does not feel loyalty to any team, and that's okay. You know what? Not every player is gonna feel this urge to win a championship for this one team or be the Damian Lillard and stay through the rebuild process, even though I'd stay through the rebuild process for a 2-year, $120 million extension as well. But that's just another thing. But that brings me to a great point with Portland. I mean, if there was one team that I really was like, you know what, it makes a little sense. Kevin Durant,
made all these
Portland Trailblazers.
They made all these moves. They got all this salary cap. They got all these assets, these picks. They unloaded the roster to go get Ayton or whatever superstar became available, and they just went with Jeremy Grant. Kevin Durant is on the market, and Jeremy Grant is now your second best player. I don't understand what Portland's doing. I don't think their players do. I don't think their fans do. I don't think their general manager understands what he's doing. If I'm not mistaken, they have an interim general manager at the moment
They
who's
do.
who's making all their decisions, which is this they let go of their general manager almost a year ago at this point, or maybe even over a year. To still have an interim general manager is ridiculous. We saw how that went with Philadelphia with Elton
Oh
Brand as
yeah.
a general manager. He's ruined the process. Al Horford contract set the Philadelphia 76ers back so much. And if they hadn't traded Markelle Fultz for Tyrese Maxey, we would be talking about an entirely different process right now, which is a complete joke more than it is right now. So these interim GMs in the NBA, they don't work. We're seeing it a lot. And I just don't think Portland has a direction as an organization. That's huge. And Damian Lillard, he could say he's not running from the ground all he wants, but as you said, $120 million, he's running towards the money.
Exactly.
There's none of that. I don't want to hear that anymore. Dame's loyal, whatever. I don't care.
That's the thing I don't get about social media and everything is people are acting like Damian Lillard's this big hero for staying in Portland. He's this dog. I would play in Antarctica for $60 million a year. At how old is he now? 31 or 32 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
in a year or two, I mean, not a year, but maybe 2 years, that contract is going to be looked at as one of the worst contracts in the NBA. And that's just my prediction. I mean, he's he's not Steph Curry to me. I mean, let's just be honest. Those he should have made the top NBA 75. That's another thing I just thought was crazy. I mean, I know he's played more games than Kyrie Irving, I guess, but Kyrie Irving will always be better than Damian Lillard to me.
I don't
Kyrie
know
Irving,
about all that.
Kyrie Irving is better than Damian Lillard. I'm
At,
taking the
at their
best Kyrie
peaks,
Irving. I'm taking Kyrie Irving right now over Damian Lillard.
wow. I don't know. Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard has put up borderline MVP seasons. Kyrie Irving has never had the peak that Damian Lillard has, averaging 30 and like 6 a game and leading a team to the Western Conference Finals. In his peak, he was the second best point guard, only behind Steph Curry for a 5-year stretch. There was nobody. I mean, talk about the give me bubble Damian Lillard over anybody ever. And that
Give me
series.
bubble Anthony Davis over him. Bubble Anthony Davis was
if
the
we're
man.
talking bubble, we're going Jamal Murray. Jamal
Oh
Murray
yeah,
is king of the bubble.
or
That is
TJ
my
Warren.
He had one good game against the Sixers, and after that, everyone was like, "Yeah, TJ Warren, man, he's a hooper." Nope. He's in Brooklyn on a minimum right now. Well, he's their Kevin Durant replacement.
Yeah, so I mean, there you go, Brooklyn. But
You got him and Royce O'Neal. They traded a first for Royce O'Neal, which, as a Brooklyn fan, they did that immediately after the Kevin Durant news. That would have killed me to see a first-round pick years in the future go for Royce O'Neal.
and he has a weird contract too.
Yeah.
Where the Nets are one of those teams. They have just a bunch of junk contracts. I mean, they have what's his name, Joe Harris's contract. It's looking like complete garbage.
Never forget the Allen Crabbe contract.
Oh, that was
4
terrible.
years, $80 million was Allen Crabbe. I mean,
the worst contract will always be the Mozgov and the Dang contract to the Lakers when they thought the cap was going to extend by 500 million, I guess.
And we're seeing that now again this year. If the cap doesn't extend, then that Anthony Simons deal, that might not look too great. There's a couple of deals like that this year.
That's why I hate the Portland Trailblazers. They can't do anything right. I mean, that money should have been not that money, but that if you're gonna give Simons that money, I felt like that was gonna be part of a sign and trade with the Nets. I that was my first prediction with that. I thought that's what was gonna happen at first, but I think Portland is staying still. I think this is their team, this is their roster, and they're gonna go out there next offseason and Damian Lillard's gonna say this is enough, this is gonna get us over the hump, and then they're gonna get destroyed in the first round of the playoffs. So I mean, I think Portland is just always gonna be they could get in the playoffs this year, obviously, again, but they're done. I think their window is closed, and they're just going to have to ride out these last couple of years of Dame and have fun with it.
Yeah, I don't know how much fun it'll be getting knocked from the playoffs every year because it's a lot of teams are like, oh yeah, we'll just make the playoffs and that'll be fun. That's only fun for a team that has no expectations. A team that miraculously makes the playoffs, like the Cavs last year, even though they didn't, they made the play in. The Cavs were really fun last year because they were competitive. Not every team has that luxury. The Portland Trailblazers they've been to the Western Conference Finals with this iteration of the roster. You cannot be comfortable with just making the first round and just saying, okay, we were competitive. You have Damian. How often do you get a player like Damian Lillard in your organization and you just not get anything out of him? Not even a finals appearance for his entire career? That bothers me. I think the Portland Trailblazers are sneakily one of the worst run organizations in sports.
I agree with you on that one, 100%. I mean, going back to what was the team you just said?
What do you mean? I'm completely blanking here.
You just said another team. I had a good point with it. Oh, what was it? Whatever. But yeah, the Portland's in the dumps now, and they're done. They're done after this year. I mean, I think this season they're gonna look back after this season and go, "Holy shit! Why do we give Damian Lillard that contract extension? We're gonna be stuck here for 3-4 more years until we're finally ready to compete." So, this is what I was gonna say. The Cleveland Cavaliers. I am really excited for them next year.
Oh, me too.
I think if you lowball Colin Sexton. I mean, obviously, as an NBA GM, I would have done the same thing at first, but I think they should somehow try to find a way to bring him back, at least on a 1-year deal, and run him back healthy. Like, I think they would have won the play-in last year. I think if I'm wrong, I think Mobley was out in the play-in. Jared Allen was out in the play-in last year. So they were hurt. I mean, if you had what is that? They're starting Darius Garland, Colin Sexton. Who's the guy at the 3?
They have Okoro or LeVert, whoever they want to play there.
Okoro, I think LeVert should be off the bench
player. I think Sexton's probably better off the bench because Garland and Sexton are two small guards. You want the bigger guy like LeVert.
That is true.
But even then, that's a perfect combination. Like one of those guys coming off your bench is amazing. Like there's nothing better than having an elite 6 man. Like it's horrible watching your first team come in and get a lead and then blow it when the bench comes in. So
and then you have Kevin Love. Still hooping.
6th man of the year last year. He should have been. Well, he was a candidate. I think Tyler Hero was obviously the wrong way. But what was I going to say? Oh, Slim Duncan, man. Slim Duncan, Evan Mobley. He is the truth. There is nothing flashy about his game, but I love his. I think he is the next superstar. Like he will win rings in the NBA. His style of play is so perfect for the modern NBA. We talk a lot about Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. Evan Mobley is them just polished already. Like he's NBA ready.
The Twitter hate for him is real.
And I don't understand it at all. They kind of rank him as the 3rd best player in that class. Makes no sense to me. Him and Cade Cunningham, 1A, 1B to me. Yeah,
thank you. And people would rather, again, I'm not hating on Scotty Barnes here, but if you take Scotty Barnes over either of those two, I really just don't. I don't know where you're coming from because I think Scotty Barnes' peak is going to be right around where he is now, and that's okay. But I think I am a huge Cade fan, and
what's the development for Scotty Barnes? Like, where does he go from here? Because he's already. I guess he becomes an efficient mid-range shooter because he was one of the worst mid-range shooters in the entire NBA percentage-wise last year. But he's a point forward. There's always those guys don't really develop that often. Look at Ben Simmons. Look at just all those they don't really get to that next level unless they're a superstar. I don't see Scotty Barnes as that superstar level player. I think he's one of those borderline all-star guys. If we're talking 2K ratings, I'll give him like an 86, 87. But yeah, exactly. I don't see him getting up to that 95 range. You know what I mean? So
I don't think he could be your number. He definitely can be your number 1, but I don't. He's not a number 2. He's not a number 2 to me.
Not on a championship team.
Not on a championship team. That's what I mean. Like he's not going to get you those buckets every time you need them. And I think Cade and Mobley are going to be fantastic. I think that draft class was extremely underrated. I don't think people talk about it enough. I mean, you got a lot of good players from that draft.
It's one of the better ones in recent memory, definitely. But even at the top, like those top 3, Green, Mobley, and Cade Cunningham, that's got potential to rival 2003 with LeBron, Milicic, and Anthony. we'll just
Yeah.
swap Milicic out for D Wade at 4, but or with C Wade 5 and Bosch 4. Either way, but I think that this top of the class is one of the best. I think Jalen Green, he got a lot of hate early on in the season for being extremely inefficient, but towards the end of the year, he was shooting 7 threes a game and hitting 40% of them. These aren't like spot up 3-point shots. He's creating these shots for himself. They're off the dribble, they're step back, they're deep, they're contested. He's a very, very elite shot maker, and those guys don't come around that often. Like I liken him to Tracy McGrady, like a young Tracy McGrady. And I think Jalen Green is going to have a very, very big, he's going to lead the league in scoring a couple of times. Whereas I think Cade Cunningham will be the better all-around player. And I think Evan Mobley is just a completely different like story because he's a big man. His impact is going to be completely different from these guys because his rim protection, nobody else offers that. So there's going to be a lot to be said about this draft class in the coming years towards the top of the league.
So who's your sleeper team this year in the NBA? I'm not saying championship sleeper team, but just a team that can sneak into the playoffs.
I'm really thinking that Charlotte's a sleeper team this year. I love the development of LaMelo Ball. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They had a very interesting offseason with the Kenny Atkinson hire and then him backing out and then hiring their old coach, which I really hated. That's the thing that loser organizations do. But I like the buildup of their roster. Maybe it's me being a LaMelo fan since he was like 13 years old and saying he was like the next big thing. But they've got LaMelo, they've got Bouknight, who I was huge on coming in last year, and he didn't play at all because he was developing in the G League, and that's kind of what their coach was doing with their young guys. Kai Jones as well is an athletic freak. I think that they've really been missing a rim protector. Kai Jones can be that guy. I really do like Kai Jones as a Mitchell Robinson type player. They also got Jalen Duren, who I was huge on Duren. I think he should have gone a little bit higher. And they got Duren, right? They didn't trade him. I know there was
He went to the Pistons.
Pistons. Oh, yeah. So yeah, they did trade Duren. They got Mark Williams was who it was. And I like Mark Williams as well. I really like their scouting and the way that they build their team. And I kind of want to bet on that a little bit. They've been missing the playoffs for a while now, but Steve Clifford, he got them to the playoffs a few times. That's what he's able to do. So I think that Steve Clifford is a fine enough head coach to get this team to the playoffs, where a lot of people are writing them off, especially after the Miles Bridges thing, which is absolutely terrible. I don't want to get into that much on here, but that's a huge blow for them. That was a guy that averaged 20 points per game last year. They're going to need to find that somewhere else, but they have these young guys coming up, and they're going to be ready to play next year because they spent a year in the G League to take over that role. I think James Bouknight is perfect for that role. So I do like Charlotte as a sleeper team this year.
The one thing with Charlotte I just hate, as you mentioned, was their head coach hire. Like, what was that? Made no sense to me. I mean, I think you're just going back more than, progressing to the future. Why don't you go get one of those young coaches that can be really good with a guy like LaMelo? We have a ton of young players on this team. So I do like them, though. I do agree with you, though. I think they're a playing team. That's what I think they are this year. I think losing Miles Bridges does a lot more to them than people realize. I mean, he should never play in the NBA again, realistically, but it was terrible, horrible thing, but Hornets are gonna have to find his replacement now, and I think it's gonna be a little harder than people think. But my sleeper team this year, again, I think they could make the play-in by Sacramento Kings. I think it all comes down to what Mike Brown can bring to them, which is, again, I wasn't the hugest fan of that hire. I mean, the Warriors had a godlike assistant coaching staff with Kenny Atkinson and Mike Brown, and who was the other one? They had one other guy, I forget who it was right now, but they just have a lot of great talent on that team. So on that coaching staff, the Warriors. But I like the Kings, what they're doing right now. I mean, I think Keegan Murray was a great draft pick. He got a lot of hate on draft night because he was taking over Jaden Ivey, who I think is going to be the better player. I love the Detroit Pistons, but I think they need one more year to really be who they're going to be. But I think the Kings, I mean, you got De'Aaron Fox, you got Sabonis, who is a little overrated by the media, but I think he's good. I think he's really good. He's a liability on defense though, which is the only thing. But I really like Keegan Murray. I like Malik Monk. I think Fox and Monk are going to be that fast, fun backcourt duo. I mean, the defense is a little questionable, but and you got the Davian Mitchell in there. So I just really like the direction of that team. I think they could be a playing team and not, that's what the Kings need. They just need to make the play-in. I mean, no one in the NBA has played against the Sacramento Kings in the playoffs. So that's saying something. Not even
Yeah.
LeBron James. So
They better
I
make the
think
playoffs.
I think this
They're
is
going
their
all in.
I think this is their year to make the play-in. That's what the Kings need. They'll have a play-in parade, like the city of Sacramento.
Like Minnesota did last year. Oh man.
Like they have their 2K animation celebration.
Like jumping up on the table after a play-in win. And I love it for the sport. I love competitive basketball games, whatever they are. Like whatever the stakes are. If they're competitive, it's fun to watch. So, and you don't get a lot of that in the NBA. So, and I do think that the Kings are a well-built team this season. I think that they are going to compete. But I'm with you on the Mike Brown thing. I'm not a huge fan of that hire. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the Luke Walton hire, which terrifies me because he was an absolute joke there, and they let him stay too long.
Way too long.
Yeah, I mean it was ridiculous. He ruined Buddy Hield, but that's a different story. I don't think that the Sacramento Kings are anything until they get rid of Vlade. He has been an absolute just like shadow over that organization, just making wrong move after wrong move after wrong move, and I don't think it's changing. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, when we look back at this in 10 years, Keegan Murray over Jaden Ivey was the wrong pick. I don't care how many guards you have on your roster. I don't care if you just signed Malik Monk. You traded Tyrese Halliburton, so you lost a guard there. Davion Mitchell, if you're betting that Davion Mitchell is better than Jaden Ivey, I'm going to say probably not. I'm a huge Jaden Ivey fan. I think that he's going to have a very, very good career, and Keegan Murray can be fine. But he's a 23-year-old prospect who was drafted in the top 4 in the NBA, and I don't love his projection as a top player, and that's what the Sacramento Kings need. They don't have a guy. They thought De'Aaron Fox was their guy. He hasn't developed a jump shot at all. Domantas Sabonis, the Pacers tried to let him be their guy. They won like 30 games doing that with him, with a decent roster around him. So I don't think that they really are going in the right direction. I think that they're trying to make the play-ins. I think that that's their idea this year, but I just don't see them making the right moves. I don't like the moves that they made this offseason. Malik Monk is one of my favorite role players in the NBA, but he does not fit on the Sacramento Kings. What the Sacramento Kings need is a guard next to Fox that can defend and shoot the three at a consistent rate. Malik Monk is one of the worst defenders and the streakiest three-point shooter in the NBA. Like it's a very hit or miss team that didn't add the shooting that they needed to. They had the worst three-point like efficiency rate last year in the last 10 years out of any team. And they added Malik Monk and Keegan Murray to shoot some threes. I don't think that helps their spacing at all.
They added Kevin Huerter.
Kevin Huerter, okay.
I mean, he's a great three-point shooter.
He's a decent three-point shooter who's had some success in the playoffs, but other than that, he's been very streaky. I don't like the moves that the Kings have been making recently, and I think that they're going to end up having to blow this iteration of the team up after trading away their rebuilding prospects to build this iteration of the team. The Tyrese Halliburton move to me really makes no sense.
That was horrible. Doesn't. I agree with you on that one. They should have, if anything, I feel like they should have traded Fox.
Yep, 100%.
I mean, he's way better. I think he's going to be way better than Fox all around. I mean,
I think he is already.
And it's a bold move. I like that. Already a way better playmaker, definitely. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I don't know. The Kings' direction is a little weird, but I could definitely. I like Keegan Murray. I like some of their pieces, and I think they could definitely be a playing team. I mean, I think the Jazz are done. I think I can't see anything going right for the Jazz right now. I think I think if they could get that deal from the Knicks to do it, but if the Knicks do that, I feel like New York should just burn down Madison Square Garden. If you give up 6 first-round picks, OP Toppin, quickly Grimes for a guard who sucks on defense and decides not to play it in the NBA playoffs. I mean, if you ever watched any videos of him from the playoffs this year, he literally sags off of the guy with the ball. He does not want to play defense. He wants to be the guy with the ball in his hands all the time. And if I'm being quite honest, this deal, if he goes to the New York Knicks, reminds me a hell of a lot of the Carmelo Anthony deal. It's an offensive guy who just wants the ball in his hands. He loves playing in New York. He's from New York. It'll get the fans all excited. Maybe they'll sign a cool free agent, which they won't, but they'll be stuck. They'll be stuck forever, the New York Knicks. And that's just how, if they make that trade. I mean,
I
they're already
like that
stuck with that.
comparison.
They're stuck with that Randall contract, which is horrible. He's a big baby. He shouldn't be in New York. I mean, when he's having a bad game, he refuses to talk to the media. New York fans love Opie over Randall, so that's another thing. And Coach Tom Thibodeau. I can't believe he's still the coach of the New York Knicks right now. And
I need to go on my Tom Thibodeau rant here. Tom Thibodeau is one of the worst coaches in NBA history, and the fact that he still has a job at this point in his career is absolutely baffling. He wins regular season games because he plays any of his good players 45 minutes a game. It is absolutely insane what Tom Thibodeau does to his team, and every single player walks away hurt or a much worse player and just completely washed after leaving a Thibodeau team. He ruined Derrick Rose's career by leading him in the playoffs in a blowout. And it's been multiple times that he's done this to players. Luol Deng's career was never the same again after playing for Tom Thibodeau. He ran him into the ground. And he just does this time and time again. Every team he's ever gone to has just fired him and not been happy with him after. The Minnesota Timberwolves fans are not very fond of Tom Thibodeau. Chicago fans, they're a little bit better, but that's because they associate him with the Derrick Rose era. But as Chicago fans, they completely understand that Tom Thibodeau was a huge mistake, and he ruined that team and held them back. And now he's doing it again with the Knicks. He's gotten 3 different chances to ruin 3 different organizations by just killing players, basically on purpose. And I don't understand why teams keep giving him the chance to do it. And it's only bad organizations. After the Chicago, New York, and the Timberwolves were the 2 organizations that gave him a job. That's all you need to know. Leon Rose and whoever is manning the Timberwolves, I don't even know who's manning the Timberwolves, but whoever's doing it is not doing a good job. And that's evident by the Rudy Gobert trade, by the way.
oh, it's horrible trade. I mean,
Want to get into that
terrible.
a little bit here?
Yeah, we could dive right into it. I'm gonna make one more comment about the Knicks before we move on to that.
Go ahead.
Though the one thing that I can get over with the Knicks with Tom Thibodeau is the Knicks roster isn't that bad, and they're still letting this man run it. I mean, you got a RJ Barrett, and in the East, I don't think the East is that great. I think this year, if they made some good moves, which they obviously didn't, I mean, I think they could have made it back in the playoffs again. But again, I think they're going to be stuck right where they're at. I don't think they're going to make the Donovan Mitchell move at the end of the day. And I think they're going to be stuck right at the 9th, 10th seed again. But that's my one thing. And I don't know what it's going to take for the Knicks to realize that you can't have this guy running the team, but that's it. I mean, I just think they should be better than what they are, and Tom Thibodeau just brings that down 100%. I think RJ Barrett should be a lot better than he is, but again, as we said. But on to the Timberwolves, I think the funniest narrative with that whole trade is fans trying to defend the trade with saying we don't sign free agents. So we're going to give up our whole future for a guy who's been noticeably not a distraction. He's not good on the floor in the playoffs. You can't have him.
He's a detriment to your team in certain situations, and that's a huge problem. To give up that many assets for a guy that you can't play in the biggest games at the biggest times, it's very confusing to me. He is a lot like Ben Simmons to me, where he's great for the regular season, and he plays very great defense, and he has value. But at the end of the day, in the really competitive games that matter, there's ways to shut down Rudy Gobert as a player, like to make him a complete non-factor, and to give a guy to not only pay a guy like that much money because he's on one of the biggest contracts, but to give up all those assets for that, and at a position where you don't even need him. By the way, now you've got to work out the Cat Rudy Gobert dynamic, which is going to be very difficult because I don't think Cat's a natural power forward. And at the end of games, you're going to have to completely sub Rudy Gobert out. That's not going to look good. No matter, I don't care how you look at it. A guy who's getting paid $200 million, getting subbed out at the end of almost every close game is not a good thing. And Minnesota they're going to win a lot of regular season games because that's what Rudy Gobert does. They're going to have one of the top defenses, but it's going to come crumbling down every single year. And I don't know. Maybe Minnesota fans are okay with that. After winning the play-in game and they started screaming and threw a party, maybe they're fine with that. But as a sports fan, at the end of the day, the goal was to win a championship. Minnesota is not going to come anywhere close. And I think they were probably better off just keeping their current, the roster they had before and just growing with it and trying to draft well and bring in free agents. I know you don't sign free agents, but you have money to pay them. Like, sure, people will pay or play in Minnesota if you overpay. Malik Beasley did. So
exactly, and that's another great point. I mean, other than the 5 first-round picks that they gave up like their whole bench, and you can't win a basketball game with 5 players in the NBA. I mean, you can, you know what I mean, but you need a great bench, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And a great example of that is the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, that bench unit in the playoffs, that's why they lost. I mean, you take their starters off the floor and you were lucky to score 6 points in one quarter. But the Timberwolves' direction, I don't think they ever make it past the second round. They don't have Karl-Anthony Towns was terrible in the playoffs. He choked on multiple games. He had a ton of turnovers. I really like Anthony Edwards, though. D'Angelo Russell's become a little underrated to me as just a player, but he wasn't that good. So, I mean, their team is constructed like a 12-year-old would make a 2K team their first time playing. And you think it's really good, but then even in 2K, you lose in the second round because you just can't win like that. So I think the Timberwolves, the number one thing for them is going to be having to work around Karl-Anthony Towns and Gobert, having to learn how to share the post together. But I mean, Timberwolves fans also are saying that the next Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So you never know. But I think though, other than having to work that out, the biggest thing is going to be that bench unit. They don't have one. They don't have one at all. They have.
They made a couple small moves. They made a couple small bench moves.
Very small. Very small though. I think the best teams in the league, you have to have a very good bench unit, and it's proven. I mean, the Celtics, the Warriors, both great bench units. They could rest your starters a little bit. But bringing up the Warriors just reminds me of Draymond Green saying that he deserves the max contract. What do you think about that? I think that is very laughable, and I think it's even. Go ahead.
I don't think that it's real. I think that's a negotiation tactic he's going to just try and get whatever he can get, but he's not leaving Golden State. Draymond Green will never leave Golden State, and Golden State will just pay him what they feel he's worth. They're one of those organizations they've got the funds to pay him. They're gonna. He's like a staple in that organization. You don't let him go, but you're not giving him $164 million. I think he probably gets a short-term deal close to 20, 25 million, something like that, but nowhere near that max contract. So
I think if you should give him try to give him a 2-year extension. I mean, if you have to overpay him a little bit, whatever. I mean,
I'd go 2 years, 50, 2 year, 50 mil. Like, I'm fine with that for Draymond.
Yeah, I guess. I just think it's I don't know. I feel like even 25 million is a lot of money for him. I mean, I know he's great, but he's a great player for that team. I mean, he's like the bodyguard on that team, but $25 million for a guy, he had a terrible finals. He had a great closeout game in the finals, but I don't know. I think paying a guy $25 million for that is a lot of money. I mean,
As
how
long
old
as
is
you
he now?
have
32?
probably older than that, but as long as you have Steph and Clay on the same team, you have to have Draymond Green. You can't; those three really can't be separated, and I think everybody knows that. Like they play off of each other so well that it's in everybody's best interest to stay together. Nobody benefits from Draymond leaving, which is why I think there's without a doubt a contract going to get done with the Warriors. Like that's not even a question. But it just comes down to how much, and you got to kind of pay him legacy. A lot of times you don't like to do that, but you got to pay him for what he's done for this team. This team does not work without Draymond Green. The three rings that they have, they don't get those without Draymond Green, and they definitely don't win 73 games without him. So Draymond Green is literally the Warriors. Like that's what he is, and he's not like the best player to ever play for them, but he embodies what they do and the system that Steve Kerr has put in place so much. Like he teaches it to the young guys. I remember watching a Marquise Chris interview a while ago, and he was saying that Draymond Green literally changed his career by teaching him how to play within a system. Draymond Green does that for all the young guys, and he's willing to do that, and there's so much value to that. So I understand that what he brings on the court isn't worth $25 million, but at the end of the day, Draymond Green's value as a whole and as a person is probably worth that much. And for what he's brought to your organization, he's brought in more than $50 million. That's a stupid way to look at it, but you know what I mean.
Hey, I go. You mean? I just think at the end of the day, I mean, he's 32 years old, and I mean, yeah, you can look at all your rich history, but at the end of the day, the most I'm offering him is a 2 to 3 year deal. I mean, you're 32 years old. You're eventually gonna have to pay Poole soon. I mean, you're gonna have to pay a lot of these guys soon. So I'm not giving him a 4 year deal at all. That's off the table. I'm not paying you when you're 36 years old. I will give you a 2 year extension. You can run it out till you're 34. The most I'd give is 3 year deal, but with less money at the every year. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting contract negotiation. Definitely. He's definitely not going to leave, but that's just what I think. I mean, I do agree with you. He is the Warriors. Him, Clay. When he's off the floor, the Warriors are significantly worse. So I mean, I don't know. I just don't think he's worth a 3 year deal with $25 million a deal,
I just
25 a
think
year.
he has more leverage than the Warriors in this situation is what it comes down to. And in a league where players already have so much leverage, I think he's going to really get whatever he wants. It just kind of is how it is. And they don't have to go over their because he's had like so many years with the team. I'm not no cap expert, but I think it doesn't count as much against their cap or against the luxury or whatever how that works. You get some extra incentive to bring back a guy in your organization in the NBA. So I think that's going to play a part in it too. So
He'll definitely be a Warrior for life. There's no doubt about
100%,
that.
100%.
No doubt about that. But I mean, I love Draymond. I love his podcast. I love all his interviews after every game where he interviews the media more than the media interviews him. So
Yep,
the best part of Draymond. But yeah.
love it.
So going to the other sport, NFL. We're in training camp right now. It's a little dead, but we got some stuff to talk about. I mean, we got Julio Jones to the Buccaneers joining the retirement home. We got another guy there. I mean, I think his production is definitely going to go up, obviously. I mean, when you're going from Ryan Tannehill, who I think is the most overrated quarterback in the NFL, to Tom Brady, I mean, that definitely will help you a lot. But what do you think's going to happen? Like, what's going on in the NFL?
Well, Julio Jones first isn't washed. A lot of people like to have that idea. He's not. You go back, watch the tape. He's not. He was running routes at the same speed as he was in Atlanta. He's still got the hands. He's still got that energy. He's getting up from hits. He's bouncing around. He's fun. Like Julio Jones is still a really great player, and it's perfect for this team. They have Mike Evans as their X receiver, but now you couldn't really fit Godwin on the outside. That's not really his game. He's a slot receiver, and he's the best slot receiver in the NFL. One of I'd say Cooper Kupp's probably the best, but he's one of the best slot receivers.
Top three.
Yeah, but now you're adding Julio Jones, one of the best outside receivers in NFL history, and you got Tom Brady thrown to him. I don't think he's washed. I don't think Tom Brady's washed. I think that's going to be a very great connection. I don't know that it will be as great for fantasy purposes as some people like to think, but I think that they will be a very productive duo, and that will help them win a lot of games. Julio Jones is not washed. He's still very good. He's going to draw a lot of attention from the defense. And I think that somebody that's going to benefit from this a lot is Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to have another one of those real killer years, which he has every year. He is one of the most underrated players in the NFL to me. I think Mike Evans is a lock for the Hall of Fame, and nobody talks about it. He's 27. He's a lock for the Hall of Fame. Nobody talks about it. He has not had a season less than 1,000 yards in his career. That's unbelievable. And go back to college. He made Johnny Manziel look like God reincarnated. And really, it was all just throwing up balls to Mike Evans. So this Tampa Bay offense is going to be absolutely insane. I don't care that Gronk isn't starting out the year with them. He'll be back for the playoffs. I can guarantee it. His wife said the same thing. And even if not, they just added Kyle Rudolph. They got O.J. Howard in there still. O.J. Howard, I think he's a great player.
I like the rookie they drafted, the rookie tight end they got too. Brady's been talking high about him as well.
Who did they get?
I think his last name's Brait, if I'm not wrong.
Cameron Brate, he's old.
No, I forget. I forget who it was, but Brady was talking about.
Yeah.
So, they recently signed him.
Jake Camarda, I think.
Yeah.
It looks like who it is.
I mean, I just feel like any tight end with Brady is going to work out. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's too bad of an idea. Tom Brady loves his tight ends, and you see it work with some pretty bum ones before. I mean, obviously he's had Gronk, but when Gronk's not playing, which is pretty often, he makes it work. So, yeah.
I mean, one thing that's going to be a big hit for the Bucs this year, if it's as severe as they're saying, is Jensen. I mean,
they already lost. Oh, he's hurt. Jensen's injury is serious. So
yeah, I know. So I think they've lost a couple people on that line this year. I mean, that just sucks for them. So they're gonna have to make do with that.
But it's Tom Brady. Tom, I don't think so either. But Tom Brady, he's always been a guy that gets the ball out, but he makes his offensive line look good. I'm not too worried about that. And plus, they just signed a tight end named Bug Howard. How much better does it get than that? Bug Howard.
How about Kyler Murray? What do you feel on him?
I think that we're talking about these horribly run organizations a lot today. Arizona's probably the cream of the crop. They suck. Kevin Keim Stephen Keim. He's one of the worst GMs I've ever seen in my life. He lucked into that DeAndre Hopkins trade 100%. But now he just traded a first-round pick for Marquise Brown, a higher pick than Marquise Brown was actually drafted at. And now they're going to have to extend Marquise Brown, who's not really this great receiver. He's got drop problems. Like they get better.
Severe drop problems.
Very bad. And they've gotten better, but he's not this superstar receiver. So they're adding that. I don't like their running back room. I think the running back room is one of the worst ever. And I understand it's not like that big of a deal, but James Conner, he was just a touchdown vulture last year. He's not an actually good running back. And their offensive line isn't good, so there's not going to be much rushing production outside of Kyler Murray just scrambling for his life. And their defense is an absolute joke. They keep taking these linebackers like Isaiah Simmons, Golden. They had Reddick, and they just don't know how to play them. Like, these are really good players who they don't know how to play. Isaiah Simmons is playing safety for them. I don't know what they're doing with that. And crazy. And then you've got like the worst secondary ever. But outside of Byron Murphy, they had two rookies starting on the outside last year, and it hasn't gotten better. They signed a guy who wasn't good. I can't even remember his name, and then he ended up getting into legal issues, so he's not going to play for them either. So I think he actually might have passed away. That even then, they lost their addition that they brought in, and it's not getting any better. So I think it's going to be a bottom feeder team, very sneakily one of the worst teams in the NFL next year, probably wins 4 or 5 games. Kyler Murray, he's great as he is, but there's the issues as to how much he's committed. They had to put that clause into his contract for 4 hours of independent study a week. They removed that, but I don't think that takes away the issue that brings up, because nobody else ever has that in their contracts. they on Pat McAfee's show, they brought Rappaport in to talk about that. He said that's completely like an anomaly. Nobody else has ever had to deal with that. That is solely because Kyler Murray wasn't watching film. And then Kyler Murray's response to that was to hold a press conference and say it just lists
How
off his
great he is.
accolades. Yeah, like what are you doing? I am not a fan of anything going on in that organization, and it's going to be a dumpster fire. They got very lucky not to be a dumpster fire the last few years. They collapsed every single year at the end of the year, and that's kind of Cliff Kingsbury's MO. Go back to his college days. He was collapsing with Patrick Mahomes as quarterback. He's never had a winning, or I don't know if a winning season, but he's never like made the playoffs or whatever with Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray as his two quarterbacks. That's not something that you can really bet on. And they, to make matters worse, they just extended him and they just extended Kine. Both of them just got massive extensions, and it's not looking to get any better. And Kyler Murray just got a massive extension too. And I don't know that he's your superstar quarterback. He can't see over the line. That's it. That I understand it's a joke. That's a huge issue. But it showed its head a few times, especially in the playoff game. He couldn't see the short passes. He couldn't. And he couldn't see anything over the middle either. That's been an issue with both him and Russell Wilson's career so far. It's a real thing. That's a detriment, and defenses can plan against it. And it's not going to go well for them.
Yeah, I'm very low on the Cardinals. I think I agree with you. I don't think they're making the playoffs for a couple of years, honestly. And this contract with Murray just digs them deeper and deeper into the hole. I mean, the fact that Kyler Murray got this contract extension before Lamar Jackson got the contract extension is even more ridiculous. I mean, moving on to the Ravens, even if I was Lamar Jackson, I'd want to leave. I'd want to leave this organization. And I know that sounds a little weird at first, but I don't know. I don't like the Ravens. I don't like their weapons. They were hurt last year and they have a great running. They're a rush first team, but if you're Lamar Jackson, they also got rid of Hollywood Brown, who's one of his best friends. I mean, he was pissed off at that. You definitely see that on Twitter. I mean, he was tweeting about it. They have Rashad Bateman. That's it though. They need to get him more weapons. They don't trust him. If they did trust him, they would have extended him already. And I think it's a little disrespectful to not have extended him yet. That's my whole thing with Lamar Jackson.
I agree. They should have extended him.
The fact that Kyler Murray, who has been a total asshole to the Cardinals organization, he's just been, teammates have called him out, people have called him out, and we're still going to give you $40+ million a year for your one playoff appearance, which was terrible. But no, I mean, I just feel like I would have never seen that. I thought it was going to go the complete opposite way, where Lamar Jackson was going to get the extension first and everything was going to be all happy, sunshine and rainbows. But I don't know. I feel like something's going to happen with that. And I'm excited to see what happens, because the Ravens offense is not a championship offense right now at all. Their defense is.
Well, it depends. They're getting J.K. Dobbins back. And if they can really be this run-heavy team that they want to be with Lamar, and if Dobbins is anything like he was his rookie year, I really do like the way that their offense is built. But I agree with you that their weapons are just outside of the running game. They've got Mark Andrews and Bateman and then nothing else really.
I feel like that just drags you down so much, because in the playoffs, I mean, regular season is a totally different thing, as we were discussing in the NBA. I mean, it will look so cool in the regular season. It will look great. But when you're playing in the playoffs and they know this is what we have to do to stop this team, I mean, there's not a lot of options with that team right now. So unless they have a breakout star or Bateman looks like Tyreek Hill, and I don't know. I just don't like the Ravens right now.
I think that really stems from Greg Roman from my alma mater, Holy Spirit High School. Greg Roman. He is one of the worst offensive coordinators I've ever seen in my life. Now, I'm talking about a lot of terrible coaches today. This is one of them. His passing game is absolutely disgusting. The route trees, there's nothing to them. There's no rhythm. There's no consistency. There's nothing for the quarterback to read. It's just a bunch of different routes all over the paper that cross over each other. It's similar to what the Jags were running. You saw the Jags running into each other, their wide receivers last year. that happens with the Ravens just on a much like Lamar Jackson is able to figure it out because he's a great quarterback. And Lamar Jackson gets so much hate for the Ravens offense being like horribly designed. I don't get it. Lamar Jackson is one of the best talents we have in the game. And for people to leave him off their top 10 quarterbacks list is baffling to me. He's probably a top 5 quarterback. And that's maybe underselling it. I think I have Lamar. I think I have him at about 4. He's probably my 4th best quarterback in the NFL, maybe 5. 5. I've got him at 5. So, yeah.
I mean, to have Russell Wilson now over him, I think is crazy.
Russell Wilson, he's not. He's at the end of the top 10. I think my top 5 probably goes Mahomes, Rodgers, Allen, Brady, Jackson, and then I'll throw Herbert in there. That's another conversation that we're gonna have to get to at some point is the Herbert Burrow conversation. That'll be another day, but that's a big one because I'm pretty 50-50 on that, man. But
I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think we'll get into it more another day, but I think Burrow's, I mean, his leadership, and I love Burrow. I think Herbert's a great quarterback, but to captain my team, I'm taking Joe Burrow over Herbert.
Especially like right now. Like, yeah, Justin Herbert hasn't made the playoffs yet. Like, we hold playoff success against quarterbacks so often. Like, Lamar Jackson's one bad playoff game was held against him for so long.
It's still held against him.
And he was a rookie. And so so Justin Herbert just gets excused from that because he's never made the playoffs. That kind of is something that I don't understand with a lot of NFL fans. I see him put in their top 2 quarterbacks for some people. Yeah. Like, I see people saying he's the Mahomes level guy. Make the playoffs. Make the playoffs, then we'll talk. I like him, but
make the playoffs.
Not yet. He's not a top 5 quarterback yet. So,
and if there's a year to make the playoffs and prove that you can be a top 5 quarterback, it's this year.
If they don't do it this year, then we're gonna have some serious conversations about what is Herbert doing and what are the Chargers doing, because they sold everything to go in this offseason. They added Khalil Mack, they added J.C. Jackson, they added some improvements on their offensive line. They added a tight end, didn't they? I forget who it was, but they added a lot. So
they added a lot. They added a lot of weapons. And I mean, they're looking to extend Derwin James now, so they Chargers have a pretty good, have a really good ran team, I think. I mean, they're definitely building a really good team over there, but again, I mean, if you don't make the playoffs this year, what's going? That is a stacked division, though.
Yeah, that what worries me.
Stacked division, and
they got to come. They got to be on their A game every single game to win that division, because you've got to be perfect to win that division. Whoever it is, and I think that the Chiefs have been perfect pretty much, or borderline perfect for the last 5 years. So what's going to change? They lost Tyreek Hill, but I don't think Mahomes is going to I think Mahomes made Hill more than Hill made Mahomes.
I agree with you on that.
Although I do think Hill is a top 3 receiver, but I think that Mahomes is just so much more important to that team.
Well, that connection was beautiful.
Oh yeah,
that connection was just beautiful. That's just. And the one thing I don't get about Tyreek Hill is how much he's pushing this Tua narrative to the whole. What you just went to Miami? You don't have to say some stupid shit about Patrick Mahomes about how Tua is more accurate or throws better deep. You sound stupid.
Yeah,
you sound stupid. Just appreciate it. That's my whole thing with Tyreek Hill. And I mean, if we're talking about Hill, I mean, that's just making me think about the Dolphins, and I think the Dolphins. I don't get the media hype around the Dolphins.
Not at all.
I think it all starts with your quarterback, and when you have basically Teddy Bridgewater as your quarterback,
that's generous.
You're not doing anything. I don't care if you have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Johnson as your wide receivers with Tyreek Hill. I mean, guys got to get it to them. And I don't think it's going to be Tua.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the way their organization is being built right now. We are 5 months removed from some huge scandals coming out about them trying to cheat a lot.
Yeah, and
they're just kind of oh yeah, we'll be fun. We'll make these fun moves now so that everybody forgets about that. I didn't forget. No, what's that dude's name that's running Miami? But damn, he was on the boat. Greer.
Yeah. Greer, yeah.
Greer. And he was just like, I don't like what they're doing. They made their mistakes on the quarterback. They really feel like a Madden team to me. They get these extra first round picks. They're taking these shots on the fun guys, but I don't know. And plus the coaching hire, Mike McDaniels doesn't feel like an NFL coach to me. He kind of feels like an offensive coordinator. Like it doesn't really make much sense to me to fire Brian Flores, who is really the only reason you didn't go like 0-17 last year. The team started like 1-8, and they finished with like what was 7-9 record. That they should have been a bottom feeder last year. They just got to play the Jets a couple times, and they got to play these really bad teams, and they got a couple really lucky wins behind some pretty spectacular performances from their defense, all based on Brian Flores. And now he's gone. I don't think their defense is going to be I know they kept their D coordinator, but I think it was Flores running that, not their D coordinator. So it's going to be a huge drop off there. I don't think Tua is getting any better. I don't think he really was a finished product coming out of Alabama. That's what people were drafting Tua for, was to be a finished product. And he's not going to develop because that's kind of like what we know him to be. And
that's who he is.
Yeah, and you can win a few games with Tua, but he can't be a guy carrying your team, and that's what they need from him. Their offensive line is still you can add Armstead if you want, but they're still one of the worst offensive lines in the league. They didn't get much better, and Tua is a guy who can't perform under a bad offensive line. They're not going to have a good run game. They've got two good receivers that are deep threats, so you don't have a guy to get them the ball deep. I don't think that the Dolphins are going to even come close to the playoffs. And there are some people predicting them to finish above the Patriots. If a Dolphins team led by Mike McDaniels finishes above a Patriots team led by Bill Belichick, I will stop talking sports for the rest of my life. It won't happen. I'm sorry. It's just not happening. And Mac Jones has been incredible through this entire offseason process from what I've heard. So I think that the Patriots are absolutely going to win that division. Well, not win. I'm sorry, the Bills. They're going to finish above the Dolphins. The Bills are shoo-in.
Juggernaut. They're a juggernaut.
Yep.
Imagine how different this conversation would be if the Dolphins just took Herbert.
Yep. Yeah.
But
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the NFL this year. I'm excited. You don't know who's going to win. It's great. I mean, there's not really the Chiefs. You don't really know about them. The Bills are always the Bills, so you don't really know. But I'm just really excited for this year. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see the rest of training camp, who looks great. As much as that doesn't really matter to me, but it's always fun to watch that stuff. I'm excited to watch the first 5 minutes of the preseason games. So, I mean, all of that.
Can't wait to turn the Hall of Fame game on and realize that, nobody actually is playing in this game, but
the fourth string Raiders quarterback is in right now.
Ben DiNucci is playing quarterback. It's starting the year. Yeah, but hey, it's football.
That's football, baby. That's football.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think that's all for today. And welcome. This is just the beginning, everybody. And again, I am Chris, and
I'm Chase Carlos. And don't forget, follow us on CC Sports Pod on Twitter and Instagram as well. And we'll be back twice a week. So, yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great day, and see you again. Bye-bye.
All right. So, good.